Hi, I'm Laura McLean. I'm an occupational therapy assistant and I'm at Cabarrus College of Health Sciences working on my master's to become an occupational therapist. I want to talk to you about using expressive arts with children that have gone through trauma from living with opioid-addicted caregivers and just share a little bit about how you can use expressive arts to help them out. Let me pull up the screen and share that with you. So by the end of the presentation, I'm hoping you'll have a better understanding of how trauma affects children, how the brain will be affected by trauma, the effect of attachment and trauma. And my goal of the presentation is for you to recognize that expressive arts can be a helpful modality when working with a child that has experienced trauma. Occupational therapy looks at an individual holistically, and they can use expressive arts as a modality along with other modalities. And my hope that as a practitioner or as a professional, you can use some of these ideas when working with a traumatized child and realize the value of using expressive arts as a means of expressing their thoughts, feelings, and to develop skills that are needed to participate in school and community. Other ideas maybe I'd like to share with you are the value of occupational therapy to working with kids affected by trauma, especially the kids that are dealing with this opioid crisis, and combining expressive arts and the evidence. I did conduct a needs assessment survey and realized that 83% of the respondents work with kids that deal with opioid-addicted caregivers. Yet only 33% of the respondents actually use expressive arts with kids that have been traumatized. But interestingly, 42% use expressive arts for emotions, self-regulation, and attention. So in a way, expressive arts are used to address a child that has been traumatized, although the professional may not even really be aware that that's kind of helping that trauma. Now, before you get started really getting into this video, I did send out a pre-survey, or I have a link to the pre-survey. I'd like to know what you know prior to watching this presentation. And I will ask for your email, but I'm not going to spam you or anything. I just want to give you some feedback, or just to know that you've got this done, because there's 3 parts. You've got the pre-survey and watching the presentation and a post-survey. So we're going to start with what's childhood trauma. So according to an article by the American Occupational Therapy Association on childhood trauma is a psychologically distressing event involving a child that has witnessed a hostile event that may be life-threatening or causing injury or sexual violence. This can be measured by the ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experience Measure. This ACE questionnaire is going to determine how much trauma the child's experienced or has experienced or currently experiencing. The measure concludes the more adverse childhood experiences, the more likely as an adult they'll have poorer outcomes. Because all children don't react equally to these experiences. I did note that, but some kids are really resilient and they bounce back, and some need more help to process and talk about the feelings of what they saw. Now, trauma also affects brain functioning. Neuroscientists have found evidence as to how the brain develops and functions when dealing with trauma. Constant stress causes the brain to continue functioning on high alert instead of focusing on growth and development. Now, attachment theory is about how we bond and how we trust one another. A child that's experienced trauma from a parent that has an addiction problem does not always get that nurturing need that they have to have growing up. The parent can be preoccupied with the addictive nature of the opioid cravings and neglect the child when the child needs them. The child can't trust the caregiver due to the unpredictability of the caregiver's actions. And I'm going to go into that a little further later on, but giving you some ideas of some PTSD symptoms in children. They may relive the event over and over in play. They might have a nightmare or sleep problems. They become very upset with something that triggers a memory. They don't have a lot of positive emotions. They have an intense fear or sadness. They could be irritable with angry outbursts or constantly looking for threats around the room. They're easily startled. They may act hopeless, helpless, or withdrawn, or they may deny the event ever happened or feel kind of numb. or they might even avoid places or people associated with the event, and that's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Infection. Now, childhood trauma and opioid use, it's defined, as witnessing or experiencing a violent or shocking event that affects someone emotionally and physically and affects the performance in everyday life. Everyone experiences some form of trauma to some degree throughout their lifespan. You may witness an accident, a natural disaster, your parents were divorced or you went through a divorce, or even moving away from home can be traumatic. The ACE measure was created to determine what the individual's risk is for mental and physical health problems later on. So this measure is going to determine the risk, and the questionnaire asks about neglect, abuse, and problems such as divorce, drugs, or mental illness. Now, the higher the risk, the more of these you've gone through, the more likely for poor outcomes. And that's going to be things like drinking, taking drugs, obesity, could get diabetes later on in life, have some depression, maybe have suicidal thoughts, and heart problems. Children in opioid-addicted homes are at risk for those later outcomes, and also they're at risk for poor social skills and because they have difficulty forming relationships. They might have PTSD symptoms, and they can also affect the growth and development of a child as they grow up. With this ongoing opioid crisis, many kids are currently living in an environment with an addicted parent, and they may experience an adverse and traumatic event. We have decreased structure, decreased parental actions. The child may not get the attention they need. The child might not get hugs when they want to. And more likely, the child lives in poverty. The children may witness when a parent overdoses, or the parent or caregiver may be moody and unpredictable, so they don't know what to expect. That's where that lack of trust comes in. Sometimes these kids are put into foster care, another trauma to absorb. With all the children that are placed in foster care, usually from neglect, 1/3 are from a drug addiction. And I know I put that fact down there that opioid overdoses have increased 30% in a year from July to 2016 to 2017. With the pandemic, the facts aren't out, but I believe they've probably gone up. So childhood trauma in the brain, this is how it works. When a child experiences trauma, the body sends out chemicals or stress hormones to react and put the body in survival mode. The hormones just coat the brain, telling the brain to go into fight or flight mode. Sometimes the child may freeze and not react at all. That constant saturation of stress hormones on the brain kind of redirects the brain from that normal growth and development and causes hyperarousal or just constant stress. This type of ongoing stress can create dysregulation on the body's chemistries. So when experiencing a traumatic event, the body reacts and coats that brain, changing the way the brain reacts to stimulus. It's always in fight or flight mode. Now, normally a stress hormone will cause a person to be more alert, enhance memory, increase your heart rate, but if you are dealing with prolonged stress like this child may be, it can cause confusion, lack of concentration, and memory problems. So too much stress can damage the hippocampus of the brain, and that's the part of the brain that regulates behavior, attention, and short and long-term memory. Now, neuroscientists have discovered the connection between children and parents, that it also affects the development of that prefrontal cortex that handles problem solving, reasoning, and flexibility. So a little on attachment theory here. Attachment theory is the way a child bonds with their parent, and it's usually the mom, and the attachment's based on this nonverbal and verbal interactions between the parent and child, and this forms the basis of relationships. A secure attachment is going to be a child that's content, engaged, and on task most of the time, and that's going to be a healthy relationship. Without this relationship, a child is more vulnerable to stress, resulting in problems with trauma, anxiety, or depression. Now, the avoidant child you may see is quiet, withdrawn, and maybe a little anxious. Maybe it's because the parents were inconsistent in care. Maybe a parent's trying to deal with their addiction so they can't handle the child. Now, a disorganized child from a parent that varies from caring to scaring. And this disorganized child can be with an addictive parent that cares, that has mood swings, and they're not always available. Now, children living at homes affected by opioid addiction often witness when the parent or caregiver is under the influence. The home's unpredictable. Regular bedtime routines are hard to follow, and due to this parent availability, it's an inability for that child to trust and lose a degree of safety. The parent can be present physically, but unavailable emotionally. Opioid abuse at home affects the ability for the parent to take care of the child, and thus it results in poor social skills. Noticeable effects of poor attachment include these different kinds of children. You'll see avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized. The opioid-addicted caregiver can't meet the child's needs 100% of the time, so that results in developmental delays with learning, emotional self-regulation, social skills, and self-esteem. Now, blend in the perspective of occupational therapy. Occupational therapy has actually been associated with the arts since its inception, which was in 1917, through the treatment of mentally ill. And they kind of were trying to give them purpose and something to do and get their mind off of their problems. Now, occupational therapy addresses trauma with children because they recognize all the aspects of the child's life. They know that their biggest occupations or their jobs are social participation, activities of daily living, education, and play. So if they need help with social participation, if they've suffered trauma, they may not be able to take turns or make friends or communicate effectively. The child may have some depression and anxiety and just have difficulty creating boundaries that are appropriate within relationships. So OT can recognize and work on that. And occupational therapy realizes that trauma can affect motivation and structure with daily routines and kind of can give them or make structure a little more concrete. So they could have trouble with issues like managing their hygiene or even hoarding food because the parents were neglecting that because of the addiction problem. Occupational therapy is found in the school system and addresses barriers that hinder success in the school. Expressive arts can be used in this manner to address attention, emotional self-regulation, and of course handwriting. Now, children's number one occupation is play, and children who have lived through trauma may be a little less motivated to engage in play and may not want to interact or even understand the interactions of play with others. They may be overreactive or even a little aggressive, and occupational therapy can address that as well through expressive arts. So what is expressive arts? Expressive art therapy are defined as the use of art, music, drama, dance and movement, poetry and creative writing, bibliotherapy, which is kind of like social skills, play, and sand play within the context of psychotherapy, counseling, rehab, or medicine. Kathy Malchiotti is an art therapist and an artist, and she's got several books out about expressive arts use with kids and is a really good resource if you're interested in reading more. With occupational therapy, we're going to incorporate expressive arts as well as other modalities to address a child's performance and participation in meaningful occupations. Now, expressive arts therapy came out a little bit later in the 1920s or 40s, and since they kind of focus more on the psychotherapy, counseling, rehab, what we're proposing is to take the modalities of expressive arts and use them with the child and say they're really getting a lot out of using music, then you can refer them to a music therapist to kind of continue that. So it's just a modality to use, and if you're seeing some really good progress or a need, then you can make that reference. So the evidence is what we're going to talk about next of expressive arts and childhood trauma, how that neuroplasticity again plays into it, and stress how important it is to provide a safe place and good rapport with a child. And that will give them the ability to express their feelings and thoughts that couldn't be produced in the traditional way with me saying, "What's wrong with you?" when they don't say anything or they can't express it or they don't understand. And expressive arts gives also a child an input for the sensory system to reorganize and kind of work out there. Since their body's been so closed, they could actually use that sensory input for organization. Now, again, if evidence has been around for a long time and it shows the value of using art as a way to process trauma. Literature I found using expressive arts within occupational therapy or other professions was somewhat limited when I looked. We do know a little about neuroplasticity. Since trauma changes how the brain performs and functions, the child kind of gets stuck in that hyperarousal, awaiting that threatening event. The child responds as if in danger. The brain sends out feelings of fear that keep that body alert. But if a child feels safe and loved, the brain functions normally and continues to develop with exploration and play and cooperation. Now, the brain can be rewired after being overrun with stress, and the brain can relearn new ways to adapt and adopt appropriate coping skills. Expressive arts can foster that part of relearning with things like balance and focus. Balance can trigger the nervous system's righting reflex that really can help your body calm down. The big thing is feeling safe. When the child doesn't feel like they can trust adults or parents, or they're in a foster home, they don't feel safe. They don't feel they can trust anything. They're going to withdraw, or they may even act out. So that safe environment is key when you're setting up this whole series of expressive arts. Now there's basically 6 different kinds. There's visual, music, writing, movement, dance, and dramatic. On the left column, you can see some of the examples of things you could try: painting, drawing, textile or textures, singing or playing an instrument, journaling, poetry, or telling stories, writing stories. Yoga is one movement thing you can do. Body awareness. There's group unison dance or self-expression dance. You can role play or even act out feelings with a child. Now, visual arts can be helpful to express emotions using hands to create feelings and thoughts. Expressive arts in this medium can be done in a group, or it can be done individually. The evidence with creative arts in foster children in a group setting, they were working on self-development and self-esteem. These kids explored their beliefs, feelings, and behaviors. After 6 weeks, and they used visual arts for this, the kids were better with coping skills, they connected more with their feelings, and were overall more positive. Drawing, dance, or role play can give a child some insight into an event that was traumatic if the child's having trouble talking about it. Prompts can elicit the child to discuss the picture, the drawing, or creation. Now the child's going to interpret without any adult analysis and just prompts. Asking the child to draw themselves or something that happened, draw an emotion, describing an emotion, coloring emotion. The picture on the right of the body parts, that's kind of a cross between the visual arts and movement. Body awareness is part of movement, and understanding things like when you're stressed out, your heart may pound or your tummy feels funny. Artwork is created to address these complex emotions from trauma. Another study summarized by Field talked about the integration of arts with preschoolers in a school setting and how it can be beneficial to understanding the social and cultural connections. Another study found that using arts in the classroom benefited older kids as well for positive social behaviors. So in the classroom, the ability to act, participate, and believe that you've got a right to be doing that and it's understood to the child provides that child with empowerment, so the child doesn't feel worthless, and this can also help with self-esteem and identity. Okay, music making or listening to music can benefit traumatized children. Jorge Oca is an OTR is an occupational therapist in San Antonio, Texas, and he founded Tambo Rhythms, and it's a company dedicated to promoting functional living through rhythm expression. And it can work on develop social emotional skills. It can reduce stress, as it says, increase self-esteem and impulse control. And I'm going to play a little bit of this video he had posted because it shows how some kids are able to promote themselves or being able to kind of have some self-control of the room. It's kind of fun to watch. love how you can show that control where the kid smiles when he gets the reaction out of everybody. All right, other ways you can promote working with traumatized children is with storytelling, poetry, or journaling. And the child can here provide an external way to express a problem, provides problem solving, or express emotions like anger. Things such as messages in a bottle or storytelling can help alleviate PTSD and create better coping skills. Now, this image on the right is an idea that was created by Shelley Clammer. And what she did is she had children to come into her workshop, and they had to spontaneously choose some images in a magazine. And then they had to glue the images to a piece of paper. And then after that happened, each child had to write about themselves as that image, but they start the sentence as I am. I am a shape that has many patterns to make something somewhere beautiful. So in the middle, she has them write a poem that describes their feelings on the middle of the page. So that's one way just to kind of get it out instead of having it stuffed inside with handwriting. Now with movement, there's 4 studies I found with yoga in one literature review that they said this modality improves social participation. There's another one talking about body scans that found participants gained a greater awareness of their body and space during treatment and addressed feelings of physical ailments from stress. One thing in this picture is I found an image of somebody who made an outline of the child, and they're going to actually draw on there. It's kind of like the other image from visual arts where they feel different feelings. But body awareness can also be just notice your toes, notice your knees, notice your fingers, notice your heartbeat. The picture at the top, of course, is yoga. And then there's a little bit on mirror, but I'll talk a little more about mirror movements on dance. Now that's mimicking body movement to rhythm. You might be copying somebody, or even in your self-expression, you're going to hear a rhythm and make your own body movements. Now with dance, mirroring does come into mind. It's a type of dance that involves when one person watches another move and then copies that movement. This mirroring technique has been shown to help children that have experienced trauma to develop empathy towards others and kind of unison with others. It said that there's mirror neurons in the brain, and that if you increase those mirror neurons, you're going to increase the ability to understand another's intention in movement. And dance and movement are great ways to express emotion. So in order to be successful with expressive arts, especially with dance and movement, the child's got to feel safe and comfortable, because you're really letting yourself show and you're letting down your guard. So dance expressive arts used with kids, usually in pairs, to address self-awareness, social skills, and awareness of others, to start relationships and attention, work on delaying gratification and tolerating frustration. Using and creating art can increase someone's problem-solving skills, social skills, sense of self, and purpose. And the mirror dance is you're copying somebody else's movement or vice versa. The mirror movement has been found to help children develop how to perceive the intentions of others with nonverbal movement. Using dance with kids that have experienced trauma, that can help create new ways of coping, give insight to behavior patterns, increase self-esteem, and increase social skills. Now with drama, puppets and masks can provide another way for a child to externalize those emotions through role-playing. They can be somebody or someone else. Dramatic role-play can provide a way for a child to express themselves. The image you see can be a representation of movement or dance as well, but in this case they're doing a role-play of some sort. In another study, success was found with miming and acting techniques using masks and puppets. Masks can help the individual improve those nonverbal body language awareness and skills and discover emotion or unacknowledged feelings. As Picasso says, every child is an artist. The lens of occupational therapy looks at a child holistically and realizes what barriers are preventing that child from performing the child's occupational of play, education, leisure, and activities of daily living, which is your structure of the day, getting ready. Understanding trauma is part of the barrier. OT can utilize expressive arts to process that trauma as well as address others' needs such as attention or fine motor coordination, self-regulation, or coping skills. Expressive arts used with other modalities can enhance a child's ability to be resilient when dealing with an addicted parent. As an OT student, I'm hoping that I can show you some ways that you can provide some expressive arts within your profession. And next I'm going to show you some more examples. But really, occupational therapy also wants to kind of share that and say this is not just for OT, since in the school we're with those kids a whole lot. We can kind of spread it out between everybody, so everybody can help this child process what they've witnessed or are going through. Now here's some examples of some visual art ideas. There's drawing clay and coloring. This artist described feeling. This one in the middle, what is a family? And the third one's what makes me sad? You could do other themes in a classroom setting like establishing safety, engagement, awareness of the self or coping skills, another one on safety, and a sense of belonging and patience. Another idea you could do is to create a visualization, and that's how do I look at a problem differently, and you just kind of think about it in your mind, or if you want to draw it out, that's fine too, but it's kind of just thinking about it in your mind if someone doesn't feel like drawing. And I found this video of the music, rhythm, and basketballs, and this is from Nesbitt Elementary School in Texas, and I'm not even sure what class this is, but there's so much going on in this. You get kids to kind of work out their problems. They're bouncing basketballs to Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite, and this is going to work on coping, attention, coordination, and sequencing, working with others. So enjoy this bit. Excellent. The picture in the corner here of the little kids doing the drums is they're all learning to cross midline, coordinate their hands, work on attention, social skills, and turn taking. Also kind of gets their minds off of anything. And there's also music singing. Everybody knows things like Baby Shark, and that can also kind of help get some of that out of your system, even though it sounds absolutely silly. All right, here's some examples of creative writing. This is a puzzle I found on Teachers Pay Teachers from the Mental Fills Counseling Tools. This idea can be used to express emotions, describe a typical day, something scary, something that happened with a different descriptions on each, like setting, feeling, situation, who was there, that kind of thing. The dream catcher, which is on the bottom, is a way to combine expressive arts with writing and constructing a dream catcher. Negative feelings are on the inside, and the positive things are around the outside of the dream catcher. Journaling and writing about things that happen, or even storytelling it to a child that may be lost or can't talk. These are ways to evoke the situation on a character instead of on the individual. Scrapbooking from magazines or finding words is a good way to work on self-esteem, with the theme being a certain feeling of when I'm mad or when I'm happy or something that happened in my family. I've created, or I'm working on creating, a website, and it's going to be a place you can go to find more ideas, and you can even suggest some things, and I'll always try and keep updating this so we can find something to kind of get you started, because there's a bunch of neat ideas out there, thank goodness to the internet. So if we can combine them in one place, that'll be really helpful for these kids that are being traumatized because their parents are having trouble with opioid addiction. So I really appreciate you taking the time for this 30-minute talk. Please complete the post survey and include your email, because I have a little bit of an incentive there. Gift card is in order for a few people. I've got it's kind of like a lottery system, so we'll see who gets that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what your responses are. The links are here on the screen, and it's also going to be in the description. So just to get you some quotes, our task regarding creativity is to help children climb their own mountains as high as possible. No one can do more. And the other one that kind of stands out here is art has a role in education of helping children become like themselves instead of more like everyone else. And if you're interested in some of the references I used to find some of these ideas, I've got them here at the end, and plenty of it. I thank you so much for your time. I wish you luck in your endeavors, and I hope you got a lot out of this. You take care.